All right, thank you. Hello, everyone. It's so good to see you back from lunch. I hope you had a delicious lunch and are ready for round two. So I am just going to get started with my PowerPoint. Let's see, share screen and we're gonna share this one. Okay, fantastic. Can everyone see the PowerPoint? I'm gonna take the thumbs up as a good thing. Okay, sorry. So in PowerPoint mode, I can only see 3 people out of all of the lot of you. So I apologize. So welcome to Playground of Learning, how to engage your young English learners. I really hope, oh, I'm really hoping this will actually work. There we go. There's my little bees. So I created this workshop to help people with game ideas and activities that they can use in elementary school classes, because a lot of the times we get theory for what would be good, but we don't actually get games to actually do it. So this is what that is. I will do my best to explain all the games. I know a lot of the games are going to be harder to understand because it's through Zoom, and I apologize for that. But we will have a time at the end for all questions, comments, and we can go back through them if you have anything. So here we go. First of all, who am I and why should I be talking about this? Well, actually, I'm Batman. No. But I have been teaching elementary school for 3 years as a fourth year ALT. I've done 3 of my years as an elementary school teacher as T1, which is very surprising and not very normal. And the biggest thing is learning how to be a teacher-tainer, which is being a teacher and entertainer together. And that is one of the biggest things that I try to do with all of my lessons. And that's the energy I hope that you guys are going to get today. So we're going to start off with some quick facts that I think are going to be very useful for you. We're going to do some games and activities. I think there's around 12. And then at the end, we're going to do questions and comments. Okay, so time to focus. How long are students' attention spans on average? So I put the reference at the bottom of this PowerPoint, but as you can see, first and second years is about 15 minutes. It goes up 5 increments every couple years. And this is quite a bit less than the 45-minute time period that we have. And so it's important that the younger the students are, the quicker you are changing games or changing the dynamic of the lesson so that they stay engaged. And so a lot of these games that I'm going to teach you are going to either be quick warm-up games, or they're going to be highly engaging between 10 to 15 minutes. And so let's see what kind of games and activities I have. Okay, so first, let's go through the classic games that you have probably already heard of. There's karuta, which is when you have vocabulary cards or other types of cards laid out, and the group is surrounding those cards, and one person, usually the teacher, is saying those vocabulary words, and then you slap your hand down when you hear that vocabulary word on the card, and then you get the card. The most cards wins. The pointing game, which, to be honest, I don't really think is an actual game, but it's in the textbook anyway, and it's where you look at your vocabulary list, and when you see it, you point as soon as the teacher says it. The next is the keyword game. Now this game I have used quite frequently as a filler game, and I always keep this in my back pocket. So you have two students with one eraser in between, and they have to repeat what you say and then clap. For example, they will do chair, and then they'll say chair, pom pom, and they'll clap twice, and then they will keep on going through the vocabulary list until they hear the lucky word. And before the game starts, you would have said the lucky word, and when they hear the lucky word, they grab the eraser and they try to do it really fast, and if you get it, you win. And then Jonkin, I don't think this needs explaining. Rock, paper, scissors, usually done tournament style. Okay, these games are great, but let's spice them up a bit. So first, I want to explain the flashcard system that I developed that not only will it save you time, it'll save lamination. And here it is, file folders, okay? File folders, however, add magnets. If somebody can you see my screen right now? Okay, great. So this is an example of my file folder, and I have magnets. I highly recommend having at least 100 of these because you want to have them ready for all your different grades at any given time. And these are for putting in your flashcards. So what you do is you print these flashcards and you stick them in, and then you can just put it on the magnetic whiteboard or blackboard, and it becomes the easiest thing to use. Just slap it on and then just learn and repeat the word. They do get a little bit heavy, so I highly recommend getting something like a file folder with a handle. In fact, I have the green version of the picture shown, and I also use this to carry my textbooks. And so this thing goes with me everywhere, and it's also a file system for all the different papers that I have for all the different grades. Okay, so you're in the classroom and you see a blackboard, and now it's time to teach something like shapes. You're in 3rd grade. You're teaching shapes today. So the first thing you want to do is you want to go over the shapes and warm up, have them repeat after you, and then you can play something called the missing card game. This is also another classic game that I'm pretty sure everyone has played, but basically you have the students go to sleep, you say, go to sleep, and they put their heads down, and then you remove a card, and then they wake up and they have to guess what's missing. And once a student raises their hand, or you can have them all shout it out depending on their energy levels and how active they want to be, you're like, that's correct, and you put it back on the board. But just make sure after a few times that you shuffle them around so that they have a better time engaging with it. Now, let's talk about musical chairs. Now, this game I absolutely love, and it has worked so well for me. So you have all of this. You have warmed up. You've played the missing card game. These students are really good at shapes now. Time to put into action. So you're going to set up musical chairs, so chairs in a circle, and you're going to play music. And once the music stops, they sit down. But on the back of the chairs, you're going to have these colored cards, and these color cards will coordinate with the shapes. And so for students that sit on the blue, you're going to say, what shape is this? And then you go through all of the different shapes. Or you can play it to where you pull a card from the board and say, okay, blue people, stand up. What's this? And a square. And so they can practice that way. A third way is that you can pull colors from a hat, and then those students have to stand up and say the vocabulary. And this is also a good time to play English songs that they would not normally hear. Because while the textbook songs are great, there are some catchier ones, and let me give you some suggestions. So Lingo Kids, I absolutely adore them. And my two top favorite songs are the ABC chant and Don't Stop Baby Bot. It's a bop. And we also have the Singing Walrus. For 5th grade, I use months of the year as the staple for when they have to learn months. And I kid you not, to this day, some of my 5th and 6th graders and even some of the Ichinensei from a junior high school, when they graduate, they still sing this song and they remember every single month. And Super Simple. I love Super Simple for 3rd grade and younger. I probably wouldn't use it much for 4th grade. They really are like, that's too childish. Okay, so another game that's really good for the 3rd grade area is Color Touch. So I'm going to use this blank chalkboard. Imagine there are a bunch of colors on here, and you have done the missing card game, you've practiced, they know the colors, you've warmed up. So then what you do is you say the colors, and they have to get up, run around, and put their hand on that color. And instead of saying just the color, because that could be level 1, you can also be, I like blue. And so they can practice hearing and then interacting. And it's important for you to add more and not just say the vocabulary, but have them in sentences, simple sentences, so that it is seen and heard in use. All right, so now I'm going to level this up a bit, and imagine that you were doing animals and you just taught all of your animals for the lesson. There are lots of animals for 3rd and 4th grade. So I have these plastic Easter eggs that I got on Amazon. They're, I think, around 50 for 1,300 yen. And so what you do is you print out these little pictures and you cut them into the thirds. And then you hide them in the eggs. And so before class starts, you want to hide all of these eggs around the classroom. And then after you warm up and they've kind of like forgotten about the eggs, then you're like, okay, it's time to play a game. And so what they'll do is they'll find the eggs, and then they have to gather in the middle of the class and start opening them up together and then pulling all the papers. And then they have to organize those papers and solve the little puzzles. And I have used this for the zodiac animals, which you guys will be coming up soon in your 3rd grade lessons, because it's the last unit for 3rd grade. Now moving on to 4th grade, I cannot tell you enough good things about this game. This is literally the epitome of hype for my students. How's the weather? I don't know if you've heard of this, but basically you start off with sunny, rainy, snowy, and cloudy. So you start with those 4 cards, and you teach the vocabulary, and then the teacher says, how's the weather? Pom, pom. How's the weather? Pom, pom. And they say sunny, rainy, snowy, or cloudy. So when the teacher says that, there are a few different gestures. So this is sunny, we have rainy, snowy, and cloudy. And so you will say it and interact with your hands. The students will copy you, but they will choose their own weather. And if the weather is the same for student and teacher, they sit down. And the last one standing wins. I kid you not, every single class, my students have screamed, how's the weather game? And it is literally the coolest thing that they want to continually play this. And it's great for the students who don't like, they're very shy and don't like to speak, because they can just gesture and they are still getting input from other kids. So it's a great learning situation overall. And when you get better, you can absolutely add the other 4. All of my elementary schoolers know all 8 cards, and the teachers are very impressed with Foggy. Okay, the next game is another Yonnensei classic. It's called the ABC Star Race. Back in the music suggestions, I showed you Lingo Kids, and there's the ABC chant. It's a little too difficult to have the students actually like learn the song, and so that's why I always have it as an input in games like musical chairs and the ABC Star Race. So you have these stars that are laminated and have magnets on the back of them. And usually I will start with the uppercase letters, and once they get better, lowercase letters. But basically you have a whiteboard or a blackboard and you draw sections off. And then you decide on team names. Now, I know team names may not seem that important, but if you give guidelines such as you must have an animal team name, it helps the students think about animals in English, and it pulls on their past knowledge from 3rd grade or 4th grade. And so at the bottom, you will have all of these tiny little alphabet stars, and they are all randomized. So all the students line up and they get ready to do a relay race. So once they hear the music start, the first student runs to the front, finds A, grabs it, and puts it towards the top left-hand corner of the board. And then they go to the back, and a line circles through until they can go from A to Z. And that helps them like memorize the order, how to recognize the letters, even if they're like turned and whatnot. And again, they're listening to English music. So they are doing a fantastic job at a lot of different things at once. So a classic for 5th grade that I've used quite often, and sometimes in 4th grade, sometimes in 3rd grade, is roll the dice. Now, I want you to see that blackboard again, and let's pretend we are practicing these animals. And it's also great for sports. So you get one of those big inflatable dice. You can get them at Daiso. And you want something that's big so that it really engages the students, and it's easily seen from the back of the class too. So what you do is you have odds and evens. Odds in Japanese is kisu, and evens is gusu. This might be important if you need to use the Japanese. But basically, if you get odds, so 1, 3, or 5, the student has 10 seconds to draw on the chalkboard what animal the teacher has shown them. And the other students are like, oh my gosh, what is it? And they really love seeing like the scrambling of this drawing. And then for the evens, 2, 4, 6, they have to gesture the animal and the other students have to guess. So they love this game. So another classic for 5th grade that I highly recommend is the on, in, under, by, jonken. So the students have to learn this, and it goes really, really smoothly into 6th and 1st grade of junior high school. And my students actually remember these prepositions by the game. So you have your right hand as a ball, and you have your left hand as a table. And so you have on, in, under, by. So what you do is you practice with the students on, in, under, by, go. And so they will slowly get used to it. And then once they get used to it with their partners, you're going to give them life hearts. Every student gets a piece of paper with a little printed heart, and they get 3 of them. And so they will have a Jonkin tournament where they're doing on, in, under, by, go. If they lose, they give a heart. They win, they get a heart. But what happens if a student runs out of hearts? Well, both the HRT and the ALT are at the chalkboard, and I like to put math problems, very easy, not difficult math problems, addition or subtraction only, usually. And I have to tell them, they have to give me the answer in English. So it's a way for them to practice their numbers. And you can gauge, like, if a student knows like 1 through 10, you can just keep it in that range. And if they need to practice like hundreds or 50s or whatnot, you can make the math problem a little bit harder. And then when they win, you give them one and they go on. And I usually set a timer for about 3 or 4 minutes. And that's usually enough time for students to do all of their Jonkins. Okay, so another game that I'm really proud of, because I came up with it myself and it makes me so happy, is the Pokemon Journeys game. So this is to practice directions, which is kind of difficult to do in the classroom with paper, because some students like have to turn their textbooks, and it's honestly just easier to do the directions. So what I have students do is, I'll go back a bit. What I have students do is I first have them practice in pairs, and one pair has a blindfold and the other pair is their guider, like a guide dog, but guide person. So they have to go from one end of the classroom to the other. And the desks are as they are. So it's a little bit difficult for them to maneuver around. So they have to learn like stop, turn right, turn left, go straight. And they practice all of these. Now, on the board, you're going to have like 25 different Pokeballs with numbers. And behind them, it's going to be these cards. And behind them, you're going to have a secondary piece of paper with a little Pokemon. So you have these Pokeballs, and on the desks, you have correlating matching numbers. And so students will do the blindfold game, except the person leading will guide them to a number of their choosing. And so once they get the number, they go to the teacher, and then they can trade it and get the Pokemon from the blackboard. And then they can switch pairs and they get a chance to do a lot of it. And then the teacher replaces the Pokemon on the back and puts it back on the chalkboard. So I want to know now, how many of you guys have access to iPads or tablets of any sort? Could I see a raise of hands? Okay. Okay, so I would say a good half of you have access to tablets and the other half do not. Okay, you could put your hands down now. Thank you. Okay, so I will make this very brief because I don't want to take up too much time, but for EduCandy, this is a free resource that gamifies all of the vocabulary, and depending on what type of vocabulary you want to teach, you can make, there's about 7 different games that you can do. And actually, if you can see, there is this code right here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's usually only five digits. This is a little bit longer. So it's a 5-digit code that students put into the tablet app, and then it will pop up with these games that they can play. And in fact, I have written every single code for every 5th and 6th grade book. So after this workshop, you guys will get access to my database, where you guys will get all of these cards. You will get all the Pokemon cards, all of all the things that I normally use. They will be at your disposal. Some honorable mentions are the black box quiz, which is when you have a box with items in it and students have to use their senses through touch or smell in order to see what it is. Line quiz, which is when you have a PowerPoint with lots of vocabulary on it. A teacher points to one of them, and then 3 lines of students are looking, and the first one to say it gets to sit down, and the first team to finish wins. And Jeopardy, which is a summary game for all of the different grammar and vocabulary points that you may have gone through. And yes, so I hope that you were able to beg, borrow, and steal all of these great lesson plans and keep the momentum going forward, because no teacher has developed these lesson plans by themselves. They've always gotten them from someone else, most of the time, 99% of the time. All right, so questions, comments. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I am glad to see all of these wonderful faces. I feel like I have been talking into the void. So, all right, fantastic. So, are there any questions or comments about the games that you guys saw today? Oh, okay. Let's see. Lexa.
Okay, there we go. Hi. So I guess I'm sort of curious about some of the things like the egg hunt, and when you put colors on the back of the chair. When is this setup happening if you are constantly switching classrooms? Like, when do you have the time to set these sort of games up?
That's a great question. So for me, my classroom size was around 9 to 15. So it's definitely smaller than a class of 30 or 36, which I know is very popular in bigger places. That's where the team teaching comes in. So one of you can like play Jonkin with the students after they've gotten their chairs all organized in a circle. Because first you're like, okay, let's bring all the chairs into a circle. And then you put them in a circle, and then you're like, okay, let's play Jonkin real quick. And you play an English or a Japanese Jonkin, depending on their level at the moment. And then the other teachers will quickly tape on the colors on the back of the chairs. Okay, let's go with Julia.
Hey, so in my situation, I go to a lot of different elementary schools with all different sizes of classes. So you just showed us a bunch of games. So what are some that fall into the small classroom size, and then which ones are better for the big classroom?
So I think out of all the games that I listed, most of them can go through different ranges. For example, the roll the dice game, that's for any, like I could do that with 2 students and it would work. The game wouldn't last very long, but it would be very useful. The guiding game for 5th grade, I think would only work in like bigger groups, medium to bigger groups. I think that musical chairs, at least 3 people. So do you normally have smaller classrooms? Are you looking for?
Well, I tend to struggle more with the classes where there's the 3 to 6 range, just because I think I do have other classes where it is like in the 35 kid range, but I think those tend to be easier and they get more ganky quicker.
Yeah, for the smaller classes, I definitely love to use the Singing Walrus's happy I think it's called Happy Song or Happy Dance. So basically it's a song that has 8 different actions that you repeat and you dance with the students. But you have to gauge the students. If they are not into like the full body motion learning, you can always do board games. Like you can print out a version of Candyland, which is very useful for students. Um, and worksheets. And I have another worksheet that I wanted to show for 3rd grade, and I hope that will help when I can. Mayo.
I was curious, have you ever had any classes of students where not all of them are in the same grade? I have one, it's one of my special ed classes, but three there's 3 first years and 2 third years in that class, and I find it difficult to come up with games that is fair for all of them, because the third years would obviously know more than the first years.
Right. So this is for special needs?
Yes.
Okay, so for the special needs class, I could do a whole different section, but basically throw your ideas and your guidelines for the regular classes out the window, because special needs, you have to cater to that group. And for me, it was very important that the lessons were repeated. Like I would have the same type of lesson plan for every week for a month, because it takes that long for the students to have that information sink in. It's not like you can teach it in the first 10 minutes and then they can use it the next. It has to gradually build. So for example, the How's the Weather game, that's something that I always played at the beginning of every single lesson with my special needs students. Karuta, things that are familiar to them and just have a little element of English is really good too. But again, you have to see what level these students are at. Okay, is that Lexa's hand again?
Yeah, I'm back, sorry. I took notes. I just, clarification for the on and under
Yes.
game. Because right, it's on and under by Junkin. So is it you do the gestures and then you play Junkin like regular, or does on in under somehow beat each other?
Right. So it's just a gesture that you do before the Junkin. So you would just go on, in, under, by, go. And so they do that sequence every time they want to do Junkin. So instead of saisho wa gu Junkin pon, instead of the saisho wa gu Junkin pon, you're just replacing it.
Okay, cool. And then
Okay.
the last one, so I don't have to come back again. Was it Edu Candy? Edu Candy?
Edu Candy.
Edu Candy. Is that an app or is it a website?
Both. So the app is so you can play the games, and the website is so you can make the quizzes. And I will give you the whole list for all the 5th and 6th grade vocabulary. I've gone through the entire book. But if you want to make your own quizzes, then you'll have to make a free account on the website and then make the quizzes. It's very explanatory. It walks you through step by step very easily.
So did you have to go through the tablets first and install the app before class, or you did it?
Right. So IT absolutely installed it way before class. There's no way that you can do it if it's not already installed.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Jordan.
I just wanted to say I also have classes that are split between grades, and for me at least, they're not special needs classes, and they are very small, only like 4 students, where there's like 3 fourth years and 1 third year, that kind of class. And I've found that I tend to work with my JTE when we're doing games, and because there's so few students, we can cater to like the individual who is on a slightly lower level. So it depends on the game, because sometimes this is harder to do and sometimes it's easier. But for example, if they have to give a specific response, the third year in the class of 4th years will only be using the grammar or vocabulary that they're learning, whereas the older students would be using like the full thing that the game requires. And it's tricky to manage, but with a small class, typically you can figure something out.
Yeah, those are very good points. I hope that was helpful for you, Mayo. Okay, are there any other questions? No? Okay, so there are a few more things that I want to go through, if I may. So the first thing, I'm going to share my screen again, but first I want to make sure that I have the, okay, there it is. This Zoom thing, guys, it's wild. Okay, so I'm gonna show you a publisher that I made, publisher file. So first and foremost, if you have not been using Publisher to make worksheets, where have you been? It is so helpful and much more intuitive than Word, because this is meant to be able to move pictures and everything around. So this is a worksheet that I created for 3rd grade in order to learn the zodiac animals that are in Unit 9. So the first side is how many. So students have to count how many of certain animals they see and write the number in the bottom circle. And that's a fun warm up, so they can use numbers and counting. And then the second side, the reverse side, is tongue twister, which you have a timer, and then as a teacher, you say ready, set, go. And then the timer is on the TV or somewhere where all students can see. And this is important because they will say like monkey, boar, boar, horse, mouse, mouse. And then when they stop, they will look at the time and see where they stopped and then write that time on time 1. And so they will practice and they will be slow at first, and then they'll see how they gradually get better. And it's a really great way for them to practice switching between vocabulary quickly and using that recall. And for me, there are a few different versions that I've made. And I never go more than 4 animals, so I can just keep it simple for the students. And Irastoya is where I get most of these images. There is a secondary PowerPoint I would love to show you guys, so give me just a moment. I'm gonna go back and stop share. Okay, give me a second. I'm gonna open it up here. Now, again, it's really important for students to be engaged in the 5th and 6th grade that I think is a little bit outside of the textbook, because there's so much in the 5th and 6th grade textbooks that it's hard to fit in games that will be very complementary. So I developed this game, which I call Where is Mew? Okay, so give me a second. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so this is called Where is Mew? And lots of students love Pokemon. So here we go. So you start off and say, this is Ash Ketchum. And they're like, who? And you're like, oh, in Japanese, this is Satoshi-kun. And they're like, oh, he has a different name. And you're like, that's right. And then you say, Ash wants to catch Mew, or Ash wants Mew. And they learn this wants vocabulary a little bit earlier in the 2nd semester. So you have to make sure the students can see this very well, but I know there's a lot going on this map, and if you guys make your own, you can have a simpler map. My class was very small, so the students were right next to the screen. So Ash starts off in one corner of this map and then sees Mew. And so you have to have the students tell you how Ash should move. So like go straight, turn right, turn left, go straight. And you're like, okay, he did that. But where is Mew? Because Mew knows teleport, and you can say, oh no, Mew teleported. And so slowly they go and they explain where Ash should go. they follow Mew around the board. And I only do 3 or 4 of these. And then he's there again. And then we go into a battle. And I always love putting GIFs so that students feel like they're interacting with something that's not just flat. And then you see if you caught it or not. And then I have them answer a question. And the question I had was, May's favorite Pokemon is, and the majority, whatever answer they chose, I would click. These Pokemon are hyperlinked to 2 different slides. So if I click on the Latias, obviously that's my favorite Pokemon, so they caught Mew. But if I had clicked Greninja, they would have been sad. And then I was saying Mew is not in the Pokeball. And they know what in is because of on, in, under, by. So that is one creative way to use PowerPoint to engage your students for directions. So yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I know this was quite a bit of information. What time does this workshop end? I just want to double check. Does anyone have the time schedule for when it ends? 2:45. Okay. Is it really 2:45? Is it really 60 minutes? Oh, goodness gracious. All right. Well, then what we're going to do is we're going to pull out into breakout rooms and we're going to talk about what games we really liked, why, and what we want to do with them in the classroom. Okay, so let's do breakout, which, yes, breakout rooms. Is that everyone? All right. All right. Welcome back from your break room talks, guys. Hope you had a nice break. So we have about 5 minutes left of this workshop. So I wanted to go over a few last things that I think are going to be super helpful for all of you. So I know it's annoying when you see like really good games and you're like, oh yeah, but I don't have those flashcards, or I don't have anything to do that game. I have created a Google Drive that has 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, and another folder for culture that I will give access to all of you guys. It will be going to the group Google Drive for SDC 2022. And if you guys look on there, you will be able to have access to all of the things I use. If you have any questions about how I use certain worksheets or like what this random thing is, you can ask me. The reason the Google Drive was created was when I moved and transferred from Misatocho to Izumo, a lot of my teachers were like, hey, we don't have any of the activities that you do because you're the one who made them and you're the one who's been T1 for the past 3 years. So could we have a copy? And I said, absolutely. So I made the drive so they can access it. And so a lot of it doesn't have instructions for how to do it. So you can ask me anytime. But for the most part, I think elementary is pretty self-explanatory, very simple, less grammar. Thank you so much for you guys bearing with me. This is my first time presenting on Zoom through a big group. It's kind of nerve-wracking. So I hope I wasn't too fast, and I hope all of my explanations were clear. Thank you. Oh, there's one last thing. So Azad also wanted me to give you guys access to something that he has developed with a few other JTEs. So the Let's Try, which is for 3rd and 4th grade, he has made a digital copy of those textbooks with English on the side. So you can read what the JTs and HRTs are reading, like why this game is played, how this game is played, and the theories behind it. And they're really, really helpful. So that will also be in the huge SDC 2022 Google Drive. Fantastic. Is there any last comments that you guys have or questions? Questions or comments? Compliments?
Nice job, Mei. Thank you.
Yay. Oh my gosh, Elliot is running.
No, I'm walking.
My found
Walking.
footage theory.
You're just walking. Okay.
Yeah.
As
But
you
that was-
tend to
that-
do.
That was a very, very good presentation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yes, I will. That's a good point. Thank you. I will stop the recording.